Alright, here we are. We finally have MCU's take on Fantastic Four. This is the third reboot of these characters, the 37th film in the MCU, and the first film to kick off Phase 6, a phase that is supposed to herald in a new age of MCU, where they will focus more on quality over quantity. So with all that being said, was Fantastic Four worth the wait? Is it the crowd-pleasing start that Marvel needed to begin Phase 6? Is it, fantastic? Ultimately, where I come down in this movie is that it's fun while you're watching it, but sadly, it's pretty forgettable. Fantastic Four is more of a mid-tier Marvel film than a top-tier one. Okay, so let's start off with some of the aspects I loved about the film. I think the MVP of this movie is the production design and the overall aesthetic of the film. This retro future aesthetic that they have created for this movie is insane. This is unlike anything we've ever seen from the MCU, and it certainly stands out. What also stands out is the camera work and the color grading. Fantastic Four abandons that ugly, flat gray color palette and instead brings in colors that pop, and for my money, this just might be the best looking Marvel movie ever made. What's also cool about this movie is that it requires no homework. It doesn't matter if you've seen every MCU movie or if you've never seen an MCU movie. The experience will be the same for both viewers. You aren't required to have seen, 7 TV shows and 18 movies in order to understand this world and the stakes involved. This is a self-contained film, and goddamn was that refreshing. Another aspect I loved was how the Silver Surfer is portrayed. Yes, I do have problems with how little of her character we get, but it was pretty fun to see how they realized her surfboard. Because when I think of Silver Surfer, I just picture this character flying around on a surfboard, but not really using it. But here, they use it. We get moments where she's riding waves of fire or riding waves of dust particles. It's a pretty awesome visual that I wasn't expecting to see. And I thought the family dynamic was mostly successful. I think everyone does a good job here, and I believed in their family unit. I would say the Thing was the most interesting out of the four, but sadly he doesn't get that much to do. Pascal and Kirby are also pretty solid, but I do wish that Richard Reed was a little more charismatic. And lastly, I'll say that there is an action sequence that happens in the middle where we are first introduced to the big baddie of the film, and that whole action sequence I thought was pretty thrilling. Honestly, a lot of this movie I did enjoy, but what brings this movie down for me is the film's plot, its villain, and its climax. As far as the plot is concerned, I was pretty bummed that at its core, at its fundamentals, this is basically the same plot as Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. And yes, I know, obviously, of course there are differences between the two, but ultimately, they are kind of the same. In both movies, Silver Surfer flies to Earth, warns the Fantastic Four that Galactus is coming to eat the planet, and then the climax of both films are Fantastic Four stopping Galactus from doing so. This to me feels like this trend that's been happening in Hollywood for the past 5 years or so, where studios are taking beloved franchise movies and making legacy sequels. But more often than not, these movies are essentially just a remake with a fresh coat of paint, rather than a true sequel with new ideas. That's kind of what this felt like to me. Then there's the villain, Galactus. I will admit, he looked amazing. His voice has this dominating grand presence, and the scale of his character was insane. But that being said, who is Galactus? Where did he come from? Why does he have to eat planets? What is this dude's backstory? We get none of this. Instead, he shows up in the middle of the movie to declare that he wants Richard and Sue's baby, and then we don't see him again until the climax of the movie. And that's pretty underwhelming for a villain. Which leads us to the climax. And I gotta be honest, man, for me, this climax was kinda dull. It's really not unlike a lot of other Marvel climaxes. It's just a big threat in a city with a group of heroes trying to stop them. Now, I could forgive a redundant climax if I care about the characters and I'm wrapped up in the stakes involved, but sadly, I really wasn't. At this point in the film, I wasn't really emotionally invested in anything that was happening. Is it visually stimulating? Of course, it is, kind of fun to watch. But I didn't really care about anything that was happening. In the end, though, Fantastic Four is not a bad movie. I mostly enjoyed myself, but it's far from the top tier heavyweights in the MCU. Which is kind of a bummer considering how much I was looking forward to this after Thunderbolts. And to me and my personal taste, Thunderbolts is a much, much better movie than this. So yeah, Fantastic Four, it's a solid entry in the MCU that had aspects I loved and some aspects I didn't. To me, this is a 7 out of 10. Alright, did you see Fantastic Four? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to know your thoughts, and until the next time, I will see you on the next one.